Hello, everyone. I normally release my podcast episodes in order that I record them, in which case, this particular episode would not be released for 2 or 3 more months. But I'm releasing it now because I feel like the content is very important. Every time I'm turning around these days, somebody new is getting diagnosed with cancer, whether it's a patient or just people that I know or have heard of that are getting diagnosed with cancer. It just seems to be becoming more and more prevalent. And my frustration is when these people see the oncologist, they're not given any alternative therapies. All they're given is the option of chemotherapy, which in some cases may be warranted. And I'm not here to tell you to stop your chemotherapy or don't do chemotherapy. But I think what's important to know is that there are some other options out there at minimum to augment your treatment with chemotherapy. But if you choose not to do that, there are some alternative therapies out there. Whether you follow Chris's protocol, which who I'm interviewing in this episode, or you follow another protocol, you need to understand the power of nutrition and what it can do in the treatment of cancer, and also the power of things like fasting and things like ozone therapy. So there are many things out there that can treat cancer. And so if you have cancer, or you know somebody who is been diagnosed with cancer, currently going through treatment, I highly encourage you to send them this episode and listen to Chris's story, as it is very powerful. I know this is kind of a grim subject here right before Christmas, but again, I just feel like it is very important. So please just send this to people who need to hear it. With that, I hope everyone has a great Christmas and enjoy the episode. This podcast is for general information only. It is not intended as a substitute for general healthcare services. If you have medical conditions, you need to see your doctor. Use of this information is at the user's own risk. Welcome to FitRx with Dr. Greg Dennis. Join me as we challenge the standard sick model of healthcare. This is your source for everything health, wellness, prevention, fitness, biohacking, and more. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of FitRx. I'm your host, Dr. Greg Dennis. I'm really excited about today's conversation. I have with me Chris Wark, who is known, he's an author, he's a podcaster. He is known for his book called Chris Beat Cancer. And so his podcast is the same title, Chris Beat Cancer. And he does a lot of blogs and really just gets a lot of information out there for people who have been diagnosed with cancer, has helped a lot of people. I was actually turned on to him from a patient of mine who is currently following his protocol and doing very well. And so I looked him up and was just really impressed. He's doing a lot of good things. So just anxious to hear more about his story. So Chris, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Good to be with you.
Yeah, well, let's just, I guess if you'll take us back, just kind of tell your story. I mean, you're a young
Sure.
guy, especially, most of the time when people get cancer, a lot of times that they're a little older. I mean, I don't know how old you are, but you look very young. So just kind of take us back, kind of when you got that diagnosis and then what, kind of how that led into what you do now.
I was diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer when I was 26. And it was a couple days before Christmas. And it was just a total, just the worst news ever. And this was December 2003. So if you can do the math, I'm coming up on my 19-year cancerversary. Yeah.
Very nice.
Yep. In just a couple weeks, really. what happened to me was I was having abdominal pain for the better part of the year, and it would come and go. So it wasn't like a constant pain. It was just random pains, like sharp pains, twinges, sort of a dull aching pain here and there. And, I just kept thinking what it would resolve, and it never did. And eventually the pain got worse. So I had a colonoscopy, and they found a golf ball sized tumor in my large intestine that is known as the colon. And from there, they basically said, look, and it was biopsied, confirmed cancer. They said, look, we got to get this thing out of you before it spreads and kills you. This is what most cancer patients experience. As soon as they're diagnosed, they're rushed into treatment that they don't understand out of fear. So they have no idea what cancer is. They don't understand the disease. They don't understand the causes of cancer. They don't understand the treatments. They don't understand the risks. They're just told, we have no time. This is urgent. We've got to get you into surgery, chemo, radiation as fast as possible. So they wanted to have me in surgery within just a couple days. But I postponed it until after Christmas. So I went in on December 30th. And the only reason I postponed it is because I didn't want to be in the hospital on Christmas, And I was like, this is depressing enough. Like, can I just not be in the hospital on Christmas? Can I have just a normal, quote, normal family Christmas? I went in on December 30th. They took out a third of my large intestine. That's where the tumor was. They took out a bunch of lymph nodes. When I woke up from surgery, they said, you're stage 3C, so it's worse than we thought. We were hoping you would be stage 2, and we could just send you home after surgery. But your next step is going to be 9 to 12 months of chemotherapy. That wasn't good news. And initially, I just accepted the fact that I guess I'm going to have to do chemotherapy. Like, okay, this is my life now. But a couple things happened in the hospital that got the wheels turning. The first thing was the very first meal they served me after taking out a third of my large intestine was a sloppy Joe. I remember looking at it going, this is just the worst cafeteria food possible. This is industrial cafeteria food. As far as I know, you can't get a sloppy Joe in a restaurant. No one likes them, right? This is like food they serve at summer camp or in the military, maybe, or in prison, right? And apparently in hospitals to cancer patients. So that was a bit surprising. And then a few days later, they told me I could go home, and my surgeon came in to check on me. And I said, hey, is there any food I need to avoid? And he said, no, just don't lift anything heavier than a beer. That was it. That was all the nutritional advice I got from my abdominal surgeon. And I went home, and over the next week, I was trying to wean myself off the pain medication. As I sobered up, I started to think about my life and my future and chemotherapy. And I had seen what chemotherapy had done to people, does to people, right, out in the world. I think we've all seen what an advanced chemo patient looks like. And it's alarming. And I just thought, is that going to be me? And I realized that was my future. And so I didn't have peace about that. It didn't sit right with me. And so my wife and I prayed about it. And I just said, God, if there's another way besides chemotherapy, please show me. I don't know what to do. I'm desperate. Like, help. Like, I need some help. And I got a book that was sent to me 2 days later. This book shows up on my doorstep, and it was sent to me from a man who was a friend of my dad's. And I'm in Tennessee. He was in Alaska. And that book was written by a guy named George Malcolmus, who healed his colon cancer with nutrition. And it had been 30 years. And he was still alive. And I was just so inspired and fascinated by his story. And I just knew I had to do what this guy did. And what he did was he adopted a raw food diet and stopped eating all animal foods, processed food, junk food, cooked food, and just ate fruits and vegetables in their natural state, organically grown, all raw, and drank a ton of carrot juice. And so I was just I loved his story so much. And sometimes it just takes one person's story to change your life. One little spark of hope can really ignite this fire inside you to do something radical with your life. And that's what happened with me. So I was like, well, look, if it worked for this guy, maybe it can help me. It certainly won't hurt to eat more fruits and vegetables. I wonder what would happen if I actually only ate fruits and vegetables. So I was really fascinated, and curious to see what would happen, and just from a self-experimentation standpoint. So I overnight, I converted my diet to raw food overnight. I went to Whole Foods, loaded up the cart, and bought a juicer, and I was on my way, and I was like, I'm going to figure this out. I'm doing it. That part was actually pretty easy. The hard part was that everyone around me said, what are you doing? Right? You're making a mistake. You don't need to do that. And then there were sort of like rumblings in the family that we heard that Chris is thinking about not doing chemo, and he's talking about maybe he doesn't want to do chemotherapy, and he wants to do alternative therapies or some weird diet. And so people who love me were trying to talk sense into me and explain to me in the best way they knew how that I had to do exactly what the doctor said, and that nothing else would help me, and that if there was something better out there, don't you think they would know about it? And that didn't help. That just created more stress, anxiety, and confusion, because the thing is, I prayed and something showed up. So I was like, this is it. Right. And I just had this clear, absolute certainty that this was the path I had to take. And again, it made sense. I was excited about it, and it made sense. And George, in his book, he made the case that the reason that so many of us are so sick, which no one had told me, previously, the reason that so many of us are sick with so many chronic diseases in the United States is because of our diet, because we're eating a terrible diet full of processed food, junk food, fast food, too much meat and dairy. It's just too much. And we're not eating enough whole foods from the earth, fruits and vegetables, whole grains, nuts and seeds, herbs and spices. And so I was like, yeah, well, that makes a lot of sense. I can't argue with that. It does make sense. So I decided to overdose on nutrition. And I was like, look, if I didn't kid myself into thinking, I can take some little supplement, some natural supplement and cure my cancer. I can drink some potion and cure my cancer. I've got to treat nutrition like a drug, and I have to dose myself with nutrition. And so I figured out how to go from, before cancer, I was a typical, guy eating 1 to 2 servings of fruits and vegetables per day, like a banana maybe, and then like, do French fries count? I don't know. Like, not very much in terms of fruits and vegetables. I went from eating 1 to 2 servings to eating between 15 and 20 servings of fruits and vegetables every single day, day after day after day. And juicing was a big part of that strategy, because when you're juicing vegetables, you are extracting the nutrition and you're putting it into your body in a form that's readily absorbable. So it goes right into your bloodstream. So you're delivering vitamins, minerals, enzymes, antioxidants, and all these wonderful anti-cancer compounds like fulcarinol in carrots, or beta-carotene, luteolin, apigenin, things like that you find in parsley and celery, allicin and garlic. So I got organized pretty quickly, but there was still a lot of pressure from family to go the conventional route. And I reluctantly agreed to go see this oncologist that I had been referred to. And the appointment did not go well. It was a very sort of boilerplate pitch. He's flipping through my chart. Well, Chris, you're 26 years old, stage 3C, colon cancer. It's very aggressive in young adults. You have about a 60% chance of living 5 years with treatment. And I'm thinking 60%, that's kind of low, It's like 50%, which means it's anybody's guess. It's a coin toss. I asked him, what about the raw food diet? Because I'd been on it for a week. he said, no, that'll fight the chemo. And then I said, well, are there any alternative therapies available? And at that point, just asking 2 questions, like it was like he'd had it with me and my 2 questions, you know? So his demeanor quickly changed to condescension, and he just started rattling off, everything in his head that he could think of to convince me that I had to do chemotherapy. And the message was pretty simple, like, if you don't do this, you're going to die. And my wife and I were he just basically pulverized us in the waiting room with just incessant talking. It wasn't not a waiting room, but it was like the little,
Right.
the little room you're in. And so eventually he stopped talking, and we got up and left, and I was basically just sort of hypnotized, and I just went to the desk and made an appointment to get a port put in to start chemotherapy, in a few weeks. I mean, he just manipulated us with fear. And then we walked out to her car and sat in her car and cried and held hands, and I choked out a prayer, and it was just such a terrible, awful moment. And I'd walked into the cancer clinic feeling good. I was optimistic. I was feeling good physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. I was just feeling good and hopeful. And I walked out of there just totally shattered. I mean, and that's what cancer clinics do to people, most of them, is they rob them of hope. They're fear factories. And when a patient goes in, they're thinking, again, they're usually pretty optimistic and hopeful, or they're trying to be. And they may ask a question like, well, how did I get cancer? Why did I get cancer? What do I need to change my diet? What do I need to do? And they're told, no, it's nothing you did. It's nothing you did. You're just, it may be genetic or hereditary, or it may just be bad luck. And what that does is that basically takes all of their power away. And it's this sort of pandering tactic that makes them into a powerless victim, right? They're powerless. There's nothing you did, therefore there's nothing you can do to help yourself, right? And in my opinion, this is just malpractice. I mean, it's medical malpractice, because there's so much published science in the scientific journals and the medical journals that demonstrate clearly that diet and lifestyle not only contribute to cancer, but also contribute to survival. Your choices matter. What you eat matters. Whether you exercise matters. Your attitude matters. Your relationships, your stress. There's all these components in your life that all are working together for your benefit or against you. And you have control over most of them. That is something that I didn't understand at that time, but I came to understand it over the years. That was the same experience that I had as what so many other cancer patients have.
Yeah. Well, everything you're saying, doesn't make anybody any money.
That's right.
When you stress lifestyle, I mean, my listeners have heard this over and over. And I mean, I'm not an oncologist, I'm a primary care doctor, but that same way of practicing carryovers to, whether we're talking about diabetes or whether we're talking about, I was never taught that there are other options other than just drugs. Okay, you're diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. Now here's some drugs. I have since realized you can reverse type 2 diabetes in many cases, but I kind of had to learn that myself. And so, yeah, our quote standard of care is it's a sick model of healthcare. It's no surprise to my listeners. Have you, now looking back, have you come up with any good reasons of maybe why you got cancer? I mean, you were a young, I'm assuming, healthy guy. Was it just a fluke thing? Has any of that ever been answered?
Well, young adult colon cancer is on the rise. It's one of the fastest growing segments of cancer. And this is largely due to our diet. It's a dietary driven cancer. It caught me early, but they've just lowered the colon cancer colonoscopy screening age from 50 to 45. because they realized, oh, so many younger people are getting colon cancer. We're going to try to catch it earlier. But again, I was 26. So, so that's part of it. That's part of it. I mean, I've been eating junk food and fast food my whole life, basically.
Yeah.
And but a lot of people can get away with that for much longer. But in other cases, like for me, like I was never overweight or obese. But people who don't take care of themselves usually end up with, in their 20s or 30s, they can end up with, inflammatory type diseases, autoimmune type diseases, type 2 diabetes, as you mentioned, high blood pressure, high cholesterol. So there's a lot of different ways that your body can start to suffer because of your diet and lifestyle choices. And for me, yeah, the cancer was the way my body responded to my diet and lifestyle. But
Sure.
yeah, it got me early. But the thing is, we've seen so many people in our community heal. I've interviewed dozens and dozens of cancer patients who've healed with a holistic approach, and after treatment failed.
Yeah.
I mean, you go to chrisbeatcancer.com, you can type in, breast cancer, colon cancer, lung cancer, pancreatic cancer, and you'll see interviews with just regular people who were able to heal because they took control of their life and their health.
Yeah.
And so, the message, and I appreciate you so much, because there's so many medical doctors that they're trained in internal medicine, which is drugs, right? This disease, here's the drug for this disease, here's the drug for that disease. And then from there, their education sort of stops, right? They just keep learning about drugs,
Yeah.
and they don't ever, and it's not their fault. There's no education in med school about nutrition,
Right.
about prevention,
It's just
about healing.
it's the system. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just the system.
And doctors are good folks, most of them. I mean, there's some bad doctors out there, but for the most part, they're good people, but they're just in a system that's trained them to do one thing
Yeah.
really well, and that doesn't necessarily produce health. It just helps manage disease. And so,
Agreed. Yeah. Yeah. Well,
so
I want
I
to,
just want to thank you for
yeah.
not being that kind of, for being, uh, conscientious enough and caring enough to realize, like, there's more I can do to help people actually get well.
Well, appreciate that. And I wasn't always that way. Again, my listeners have heard this many times, but I practiced more traditional medicine for years and years and years. And I finally came to the conclusion just on my own that it wasn't working. I mean, like, people weren't getting better. And
Yeah.
I'm really surprised now, doing what I do and looking back, I'm like, why don't more doctors see this? Now I feel like the veil has been lifted and I can see clearly, but I'm like, and I don't know if they're just so busy and they just don't care and they just keep, doing the same old, but like, why don't more doctors see that what we're doing isn't working? And that's kind of what happened to me, fortunately. But
I feel like, and you can tell me, because I mean, I've never been a doctor, but I feel like, the volume of patients that a physician has to see every day is pretty overwhelming.
yeah, that's
And
certainly
there's
part of it.
very
Yeah.
little, in order just to make a living, because your expenses are so high, your overhead is high, your expenses are high, your liability insurance, like all this kind of stuff. And like, you have to see a lot of patients, and the insurance companies don't pay very much, per patient. And so it becomes, I mean, doctors are just in this sort of crushing situation where they, once they get out of med school and they're just working their butts off, they just don't have time to keep learning and reading and researching. And it's like, they just got to keep working. And
Yeah.
so,
No,
like,
you're right. Yep.
I get it. That's why I'm saying, like, I'm just so thankful that there are physicians like yourself that, like, just broke out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate that. Well, I want to go back a little bit and ask you about the nutrition part. And so, I agree that, the processed foods and the foods that on the standard American diet are just slowly killing us all. So getting away from that is a good, healthy step. But I know you said you read this book, but I'm curious how or why you landed on more of the kind of the fruits and vegetables, because there's a lot out there. I know, I'm not an oncologist or cancer expert, but just being in the longevity field, I know that cancer cells love sugar. And so there's a lot of research about, a ketogenic type diet, to help treat cancer, and certainly, fasting can help. And so what made you kind of land on the juicing and the fruits and vegetables? And I just wonder, would you have gotten similar results on, say, a carnivore diet? I mean, an all meat diet, because you're eliminating the processed foods. And I don't know that we know the answer to that. There probably have been no studies, but did you research all that when you were doing this? And what made you kind of land on that?
Great question. I'm excited to answer it. So again, I read one book, and that book led to another and another and another. And at that time, there was such little information out there. There was no helpful information online in 2004. There was no YouTube. There was no social media, no Facebook, no Twitter, none of it, right? The internet was it was just text, and I don't even know what people did on the internet. Like, it's hard to remember what we did online before social media and before YouTube. So I just went from book to book to book. And what I found was, from George Malcolmus to Dr. Richard Schultz to Dr. Lorraine Day to Anne Fromm to like Paul Bragg, Pavel Areola, like all of these natural health pioneers were all, Ann Wigmore, were all saying the same thing: raw food, raw fruits and vegetables, and juicing. This is the path to optimal health and healing. And so I just kept getting these confirmatory messages. And so I was like, okay, I mean, every book, everything I investigated was just telling me the same thing, which in some ways it made it a lot easier than it is today, because you have all this information now. It's like information overload online. So yeah, I just said, okay, well, I just keep running into the same information. And so I'm just going to stay on this path. Then I got well, obviously. I found an integrative oncologist. And all this is in my book, by the way, Chris Beat Cancer. There's a lot more details on my story and everything. But found an integrative oncologist who ordered my blood work every month, ordered CT scans every 6 months. I found a naturopathic doctor. I mean, I had acupuncture, chiropractic. I mean, I just did every integrative therapy I could find and afford, including IV vitamin C infusions. After 6.5 years, I had another scan around the 5-year mark. And after 6.5 years, I was like, basically the oncologist said, look, you're in the clear. And that's when I started thinking about, well, maybe I should share my story. People kept asking me, like, what did you do? I heard you didn't do chemo. Like, what, And so that's when I started Chris Beat Cancer, the blog, just to start telling my story and sharing what I'd learned. And anyway, it grew really fast, because little did I know, there was a lot of people out there that were looking for answers, right? Looking for hope and encouragement and inspiration and practical advice. So that was the path I took. And what I found was, once I put my story out there, I started finding other people who had also healed. And so I was like, well, hey, this is awesome. Like, can I interview you? So I started interviewing other survivors. And what I found is we all did the same things over and over and over and over. People who healed cancer do it with a plant-based diet, mostly raw, lots of juicing. And of course, they cut out all the other stuff. And so the path became very clear. It became very clear to me that I wasn't a fluke or an anomaly or just lucky, but I also didn't understand the science. And so once I started blogging, I was like, I need to make sure that I'm not just lucky, right? There's a pattern here. They're healing. I don't really understand why. It makes sense why, but I don't understand, like, is there a scientific basis for nutrition as the role of nutrition in healing cancer? And so that's when I started reading the nutritional science journals and articles and medical literature. And lo and behold, there are hundreds of thousands of studies, I'm not exaggerating, on the anti-cancer activity and compounds in fruits and vegetables. And they've been studied over and over and over. One of my favorite studies was published in 2004, and they dripped vegetable juices on cancer cells in the labs. They just juiced vegetables, dripped them on cancer cells to see what would happen. And the most potent anti-cancer vegetable was garlic. I mean, they used 8 different cancer cell lines. It wiped out the cancer cells, all 8 lines. The second most powerful was leeks. Third was onions. Well, they're all in the same family of vegetables, the allium family: garlic, onions, and leeks. And then rounding out the top 10 was basically the cruciferous vegetables. So broccoli, cauliflower, kale, cabbage, onions. Not onions, kale, cabbage, wasabi, bok choy. What was so amazing about that study was those were the foods that I ate the most of what I did was I made a giant salad for lunch and dinner every single day. And it was broccoli, cauliflower, kale, cabbage, onions, mushrooms, peppers, sprouts like sprouted mung beans, sprouted garbanzo beans, spices, turmeric, oregano, cayenne pepper, garlic powder, apple cider vinegar, olive oil. I mean, it's just the most delicious, flavorful, spicy, savory salad ever. It's absolutely amazing. When I sort of threw everything I had in the bowl and concocted this, the first time I ate it, I was like, well, this is really good. I could eat this every day. And then I thought, well, if I can eat this every day, maybe I can eat it twice a day and really pump in the nutrition. And so that became my core anti-cancer diet, was fresh vegetable juices, 64 ounces a day, and then 2 giant salads, and then fresh fruit for snacks or nuts, or a fruit smoothie with, blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, strawberries. The berries are the most potent anti-cancer fruits from a couple reasons. Anthocyanins and then like ellagic acid are 2 big compounds in berries that are anti-cancer. And so to the question about sugar and protein and carnivore, there was a study that came out of Vanderbilt last year, I think, or the year before. It's pretty recent. I think it was last year. And what these researchers found was that, we've heard a million times sugar feeds cancer. And the reason that they say sugar feeds cancer is because when they give a cancer patient a PET scan, they inject them with glucose. And that glucose has a radioactive tracer in it. And so cancer cells have, something like 15 to 20 times more insulin receptors than a normal cell. And so they suck up the sugar faster than a normal cell. And so they suck up this glucose, and then they give you the scan, and then the cancer tumors or lesions light up on the scan. So because the cancer cells take up the sugar faster, it's led to this thing, sugar feeds cancer, right? Unfortunately, it's like a sort of a minimalistic or reductionistic idea that's not true, because cancer cells also use protein and fat for fuel. So they can use sugar, they can use protein, especially like glutamine and methionine, those 2 amino acids, and then fatty acids. So you can't starve cancer by eliminating sugar. And so these researchers at Vanderbilt did a study where they actually measured the amount of sugar used inside the tumor microenvironment and what types of cells were using sugar. And what they found was the cells inside the tumor that were using the most sugar were not the cancer cells. They were immune cells. The cancer cells preferred glutamine. That's what they liked for fuel. But the biggest users of sugar were the immune cells in the tumor. And what we see a lot of times with cancer treatments is when you give someone chemotherapy, the tumors shrink because chemotherapy is so highly toxic and poisonous, it kills rapidly dividing cells. That's your hair, your nails, but it's also your immune cells. So a lot of times when a tumor is shrinking, chemo will make a tumor shrink, but it's not necessarily killing the cancer cells or the cancer stem cells. It's killing these daughter cells or other cells in the tumor, like immune cells. The double-edged sword of chemo is that when you shrink a tumor, that seems like a good thing and everybody celebrates and they're like, let's go to Olive Garden. My tumor shrunk by 30% or whatever. But the reality is during that treatment, you have decimated your immune system. So chemo drugs cause brain damage, liver damage, lung damage, heart damage. They wreck your digestive system. They decimate your bone marrow, your red blood cells, your white blood cells. And so when the treatment stops and you get to ring the bell, like, ding-a-ling, it's my last chemo treatment, everybody, and you go home, you're in this very precarious state where you have smaller tumors, or maybe the tumors have disappeared, but you also have a wiped out immune system. And in most cases, you still have the cancer stem cells, and they start reproducing right away and spreading right away, and you have no immune system to fight them off. And that's why we see over and over and over patients get aggressive metastasis after chemo. within 3 to 6 months, 9 months after chemo.
Mhm.
They go back for a scan and they say, oh, well, now you have spots in your brain, your liver, your lungs, your spine, your bones. Again, this is the paradox of chemotherapy. It's sort of like what I like to call a short-term solution for a long-term problem. So that's a bit of a diatribe, but I'm coming back around to explain that, what nutrition does is there are compounds in nutrition that directly kill cancer cells. But there are also compounds in nutrition that prevent tumors from growing. There are compounds that prevent cancer cells from spreading, from multiplying. There are anti-angiogenic compounds that prevents tumors from growing new blood vessels. Dr. William Lee has done a lot of great research on the anti-angiogenesis. And then you're also getting nutrition and compounds that strengthen and empower your immune system to work better and kill cancer cells. So there's a lot of different ways you can target cancer. And also you're starving it from its favorite sources of fuel, which it may sound controversial, but that's protein and fat. So the sugar is not the problem for cancer patients. It's really protein and fat consumption. So along the carnivore or keto conversation, I have an article on my website. If you go to Chris Beat Cancer and you type in keto, you'll see a very lengthy article where I'm just showing you all the studies on the ketogenic diet for cancer and how basically they've all failed. None of them have done anything. The best studies they have are rat studies, and they're not even that great once you really dig into what the ketogenic diet did for rats with artificially induced cancer. But protein can fuel cancer in several different ways. One is methionine. That's this amino acid that most cancer cells are dependent on to survive. Two is TMAO, which is a cancer-causing compound from cooked meat, or any meat. Really, it doesn't have to be cooked. It could be raw. Three, you've got cholesterol, which cancer cells love for fuel. Four, you've got NEU5GC, which is a sugar molecule in animal protein that fuels cancer growth. Iron, especially heme iron, is another cancer fuel, and it's rich in animal food, and there's no heme iron in plant food. Plant food has a chelated form of iron that's a slow absorbing iron that prevents you from getting basically iron toxicity. Interestingly, the body can't get rid of iron unless you bleed. So women who menstruate naturally shed iron, which is good. People who give blood shed iron, and they have lower rates of cancer. I talk about this in the book. This is cited. But if you eat a lot of iron, like iron-rich foods, you end up with iron toxemia and problems. So anyway, all those, there's a number of ways that animal food fuels cancer growth. And so eliminating it just I didn't know any of this at the time, but now that I've seen all this research, it helps to explain how a plant-based diet, especially raw, but a plant-based diet with no saturated fat, no cholesterol, no animal protein, not only helps starve the cancer, but empowers your immune system with all the nutrition that you're getting, And so the sugar part of it is like your cells love sugar. Like we love sugar, right? All your cells, they love it. They run on it. Your immune cells love it. And so the sugars you get from fruit and from like carrot juice, fresh vegetable juices, beet juice, it's kind of like a Trojan horse. It gives energy for fuel, which is important, but it also is delivering vitamins, minerals, enzymes, antioxidants, and anti-cancer compounds to your blood, to your cells. So, it all works together. The other components would be exercise and stress reduction, because at the end of the day, the difference between a person with tumors and a person with no tumors, it's really boils down to their immune system. And that's why immunotherapy is the next frontier of cancer drugs, because they've figured out, well, if we can somehow program or harness the immune system, if we can get the immune system to recognize the cancer cells, if we can figure out why it doesn't recognize the cancer cells and get it to, we can save more lives. Unfortunately, immunotherapy is not working very well. It's only helping a very small percentage of patients for a small number of cancers at this point. But kudos, they're sort of on the right track in terms of pharmaceutically. But empowering the immune system is the key. So you can do it with nutrition, but you can also do it with exercise, and you can also do it with stress reduction. So all of those things work together to strengthen your immune system. Because when you're stressed, when you're fearful, when you're worried, when you're angry, when you're holding on to bitterness from people who've hurt you, you are suppressing your immune system. You're in a state of fight or flight. I call fight or flight light, which is like most people. And when you're in a state of fight or flight, your adrenaline and cortisol are elevated, and that's suppressing immune function. So again, there's a cascade of lack of nutrition, too much cancer fuel, too much stress, right? Immunosuppression, and inflammation. And that's the perfect storm for cancer in most people. For me, the stress was a big part of it. Nutrition was a big part of it. I wasn't exercising either. So all those were factors in my life. But, I have to point out that the number one cause of cancer is smoking. It's still smoking. It's still the number one cause. And no one's born a smoker, right? People choose to smoke. I get that it's very addictive, but it is the number one cause of cancer. The number two cause is obesity. Obesity, the number two cause. So again, this is based on our choices, right? We choose what we put in our mouth. We choose how many times a day we eat. We choose what we eat. And we choose whether or not to be active or sedentary, and that contributes to obesity. So I'm not fat shaming or body shaming or whatever. I'm just helping you understand that when a person is overweight or obese, the body is in a suboptimal state, and there's a burden. There's an excess burden on the entire system when you're carrying around too much body fat. And those fat cells specifically release molecules that are inflammatory in your body that promote inflammation. They also are constantly dumping fatty acid into your bloodstream, and your immune cells actually gobble up those fatty acids and become slow and sluggish. This was another sort of landmark study that came out just a few years ago, where researchers found that immune cells in an obese environment were also obese, which is like, whoa, right? So it explains why a person who's overweight or obese is more susceptible to chronic infection, right? To life-threatening infection from, germs that everyone's concerned about, and higher rates of cancer, because they have two major cancer contributing factors at once. They have immunosuppression and chronic inflammation. And a third factor really is fat cells produce estrogen, and estrogen is cancer fuel. So when you start to dig into all the causes of cancer, the dots all start to connect. And you can see, at least in my own life, once I got well and I wanted to understand and hopefully be a good teacher, once I started to just read and research, it was like, oh, this everything makes sense. It's all there in the literature. It's all been studied. I mean, there's more to study, of course, but it's all there if we could just put it together in an organized way and explain to folks, the simplicity of it is that your choices create your life and your health. And you can make simple changes to your daily routine that over time pay these wonderful dividends of health and vitality. Or you can keep going down the road of chronic disease, like most Americans, and eventually you're going to need to get on some medication for high blood pressure or high cholesterol. And then those medications cause some other problems, and you need another medication and now you're in the vicious cycle, right? And your health starts to spiral downward, because it's just medication on top of medication on top of medication. And one medication's making you can't sleep, so you take a medication for that, or the medication's making you depressed, so now you take an antidepressant. So I mean, I know people that are taking 5, 6, 10 different drugs.
You're right. It's a vicious cycle. So
they get stuck in this thing. Yeah. But the good news is there's hope, right? The hope is that you can actually interrupt this process, this downward spiral, and reverse it and create the virtuous cycle, right? That's where your health spirals up. It improves, and you can wean yourself off of pharmaceuticals. You need to work with a doctor, of course, to make sure you've got medical supervision there. But when you start to change your diet and start exercising and start taking care of yourself like you never have before, your health gets better.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you, so the protocol that you followed and that you now recommend, is it does it have an end point to eating, kind of juicing and eating all, nothing but pretty much fruits and vegetables? Is that for just a certain amount of time, and then they, begin to add, fish and chicken and whatever, and kind of go, to I'm sure a clean diet, but I mean, what does that kind of look like that you did and that you now recommend?
Great question. I love it. Thank you. There's an initial phase, which is like the hardcore intensive anti-cancer phase. And what I suggest is 100% raw for 90 days. So 90 days of raw food and juicing. And we encourage folks in our community, obviously work with a doctor, go get your blood work done, go get scans done, take this massive action, overdose on nutrition, right? Start changing your life in every way possible. And then in 90 days, go back and get checked again and see how your blood looks, right? Look at your markers of inflammation, look at your cholesterol, look at your liver enzymes, like look what's happening in your blood, right? Look at your cancer markers, get a scan. So what we find is that it's remarkable how many people improve dramatically in a short time, in 90 days, if they really go after it. Like if they just completely change their life and do what I did, just go hardcore with nutrition. And so, but beyond that, and from there, it's kind of like, look, if you're getting great results, just keep going, right? There's no reason to change what you're doing if it's working. And so a lot of folks just continue on. They just stay on a mostly raw diet, but maybe not 100% raw. So usually folks will incorporate cooked food back in. So cooked vegetables, oatmeal, lentils, all the cooked legumes, of course, sweet potatoes, just all the tubers, anything cooked, right? Any cooked vegetable. And so that's sort of like the maintenance diet. And then the longevity diet is, I think the Blue Zones is a great model for longevity because, Dan Buettner traveled around the world, funded by National Geographic. He found the longest living people on different continents. And what they had in common was they ate diets that were about 95% plant-based. So they weren't vegans or vegetarians, but they ate a ton of plant food and very little animal food and very little processed food or junk food. And it, to me, and the Seventh-day Adventists, the Adventist Health Study, which has been going for decades in Loma Linda, California, on the longest living Americans, which are the Adventists in Loma Linda, California, which is one of the Blue Zones, is just a great real world living model. Like it's not speculative. It's like we have real data on real humans and they're alive now. It's not like, oh, our caveman ancestors were super healthy. How do we know? I don't know. We're just guessing, really. We'd have never met any of them, right? So this is, to me, it's much more concrete and substantial. So anyway, that's how I live and eat now. I eat a plant-based diet. I'm not all raw. And it's about 98% plant-based. I'm not a vegetarian or a vegan. I don't subscribe to dietary identities. I'm just focused on health. I don't eat that way for any other reason. And I'm 45 years old. I'm the fittest and strongest I've ever been in my life. I'm an active, CrossFit, functional fitness, cross training type of guy.
That's actually incredible. So I was just getting ready to ask you how you feel, because I do CrossFit as well. If I were to imagine myself eating, just a plant-based diet, which would be miserable to me, but I would do it if I had to. I'm kind of lean towards the opposite. I love meat. But anyways, it seems like it would be hard for me to get enough calories in. And so when I don't get enough calories, and that's kind of the whole debate, with me kind of being in longevity medicine, there's this debate of the mTOR pathway and the AMP kinase, system. And, mTOR is promotes growth, which, in your case could promote cancer. I get that. The AMP kinase is kind of
Mhm.
the balancing act of that. But if you're all one way, then some would argue kind of in the longevity space, well, what good is it to live to be 110 if you're going to be frail, not feel good, not have any libido? Where mTOR, you're going to be strong and you're going to have muscle, and muscle helps with longevity, and you're going to feel good, and you're going to have a sex drive. And so there's a balancing act, I guess, is kind of what I subscribe to. So hearing you say that you do intense fitness and just eat vegetables, that's impressive. Any idea, like, how do you get enough calories, I guess, would be my concern. For me, like,
Yeah.
it's hard to get enough calories, I would think, eating that way.
My fitness goal is just longevity, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to get huge. I'm not trying to even increase my max anything
Hmm.
necessarily. So I don't worry about just pounding in the food. I just want to feel good and be healthy and stay strong. I'm already, for what I consider, I'm strong enough. So I'm 6'2", I'm 160 something pounds. I can clean and jerk 215. I can back squat 225 pounds a bunch of times or whatever. I can do muscle ups, like butterfly pull ups. I could do, 150 double unders unbroken. I can run a sub 6 minute mile. You know what I mean? So it's like I'm at a level of fitness that is more fit, substantially more fit than the average person. And so, but the way I eat is typically oatmeal for breakfast. And in that bowl of oatmeal, it'll be a cup of dry rolled oats, organic, of course, with hemp seed, flax seed, and chia seed. So there's a lot of protein in those three seeds. And then I'll add blackstrap molasses for the iron, potassium, and magnesium. And I will put cinnamon and allspice to really amp up the antioxidant content. By the way, blackstrap molasses is the highest antioxidant sweetener. And then I'll put fresh blueberries or raspberries or goji berries or prunes or apricots, anything. I just load it up. So it's about 1,000-calorie bowl of oatmeal, and it's delicious. And then lunch will, a lot of times, will be a giant fruit smoothie. So it's like a full Vitamix blender of 4 cups of berries, blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, strawberries, cherries, several giant handfuls of kale and spinach, hemp seed, again, hemp hearts, technically, 3 tablespoons of hemp hearts, and then almonds and walnuts, and some dates or bananas, and fill it up with water and just blend it up. So there's lunch, and that's also, pushing 1,000 calories. And then dinner is often, could be the giant salad, or it could be some cooked vegetables. So like black beans, red rice, collard greens, pinto beans. All the legumes are always, on the plate. So there's always legumes. There's white potatoes, purple potatoes, sweet potatoes. I mean, it's just carb heavy. It's lots of starches, lots of carbohydrates, and leafy greens. But yeah, there could be cauliflower or broccoli. We have a cookbook called Beat Cancer Kitchen, and there's a bunch of recipes in there, and it's all plant-based. And so, I mean, we've just figured out how to make these just amazing, delicious meals that fill you up, and they taste so good and give you energy. And so that's just my typical daily routine is like, 1 to 2 raw meals and a cooked meal. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. Have you ever seen The Game Changers?
I've heard of it. I don't think I've watched it. So
It's great. It's a documentary produced by Arnold Schwarzenegger, and it's a documentary about plant-based athletes.
mhm.
And it's just great because, it's not trying to necessarily prove that every athlete should be a vegan or be plant-based or whatever, but it's just showing there are world-class athletes, jiu-jitsu, Olympians, distance runners, strongmen, CrossFit athletes. Novak, one of the top tennis players in the whole world, are they all eat plant-based and vegan diets. And so it's like, it just kind of breaks that, I think, common belief system that like I can't be fit or I can't be strong if I don't eat a lot of animal food. And it's like, well, wait a second, these people are I'm nowhere near their level, right, of athleticism, and they're not eating animal food. So it's cool. I mean, it just kind of helps, like, it just kind of helps you think about, oh, well, maybe I could thrive and feel really good and have lots of energy eating less meat.
Yeah. I'm curious, because what you mentioned, you eat quite a few carbs, and most of my listeners are probably lower carb. But have you checked like a fasting insulin level on yourself?
Yeah. Yeah. Whenever I have blood work done, I mean, it's like 90 or whatever. Yeah. It's just
So that'd be blood
glucose.
sugar. But what about
Yeah.
like a fasting insulin level?
Fasting insulin, no.
Okay. Yeah.
But blood sugar, yeah. The last time I had blood work, yeah, it's around 90.
Yeah, you might. I mean, I'm not saying you're obviously fit, and a CrossFitter and stuff, so it's probably fine because you look like you're very metabolically healthy. But I'd be curious to know what your fasting insulin level is. Not a lot of doctors check that. You'd have to ask for that, but it's it's a good indicator, because it'll go up way before the blood sugar does. So it's a good indicator of metabolic health, which again, I'm sure you're fine. I mean, you're very active and stuff, but anyway, it'd be interesting to know what that is.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I would like to know.
Yeah.
And I don't think they normally, you probably have to ask for that.
Yeah, they wouldn't normally check that.
Yeah, I'll ask for it.
Yeah. Well, real quick, we're kind of running out of time here, but I'm wondering, did you incorporate any fasting in your regimen? So
Yes.
When I was traveling recently, I was looking for a podcast, and I, knowing I was going to be interviewing you, I found one. It was a similar story. Guy actually had colon cancer. I don't believe he had any surgery. He had a pretty good sized tumor. And he, instead of kind of just turning to the kind of the raw diet like you did, he just completely fasted. He fasted for 21 days straight, nothing but water, which would be rough. But he said within that time, within 21 days, his tumor shrunk to 50% of what it was. And so he thought, well, I'm on to something. And so I don't remember what he did after that, but I think he did more of a strict keto type protocol, and then he fasted again. Anyways, and he ended up curing his cancer that way. And so I'm curious where you incorporated the fasting and how long a fast you did and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, fasting is awesome. I'm a huge fan of it. It was definitely part of my routine, juice fasting and water fasting. And I've interviewed a number of experts on fasting, Dr. Walter Longo. I've interviewed him twice, Dr. Alan Goldhammer, who runs the True North Health Center. And that's the longest running water-only fasting clinic in the US. He's been doing that since the early 80s, so pushing 40 years. And literally all they do there is they put patients on a plant-based diet to prep them, and then they put them on a water-only fast for up to, anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks, water only, medically supervised water only fasting. And then they help them break the fast and get them on a whole food plant-based diet from there. So yeah, no, it's incredible. Fasting weakens cancer cells and causes cancer cells to die. It's demonstrated equivocally. It also regenerates your immune system. It triggers stem cell activation. Fasting is awesome. And the easy way to fast really is, what we encourage is just 3 to 5 days on water. And you can do that about every 6 weeks. Now, you could go to a place like True North and do an extended fast, which is awesome, but you don't want to do 21 days without medical supervision. Sure. It's pretty risky. Yeah. If you're obese, you could probably do it without much problem, right? You got a lot of body fat to burn off. If you ever watched that show, Alone, have you ever watched Alone?
I don't think I have. Yeah.
It's pretty good. It's like a survival show, and they send 10 people out into the wilderness, and they're not together, right? They're alone, and they're competing for $500,000. And but they have to film themselves, so they give them this camera equipment, and they drop them off with some supplies, and they're like, good luck to you. But they all basically end up losing 30, 40, 60 pounds over the course of a couple months, because they're in a starvation kind of fasting situation. Sure. Right. Yeah. With no medical supervision. But they do get some health checks, I think, here and there. But anyway, it's a fascinating show. Back to the fasting thing. It's like, it's such a good practice, and anybody could do 3 days on water. I know it sounds intimidating if you've never done it, but you'd be surprised. Like the first day is not hard. Like you might get a little hungry around dinner time, but most of us have gone almost a whole day without eating anyway because we're busy. So the first day is pretty easy. Day 2, you feel, lousy, right? Low energy. You'll start to feel it. You don't feel great. And then day 3 can go either way. You may feel worse or you may start to feel a little better. Usually by day 4, people start to feel good if they go longer. But I encourage doing it over a weekend. So you start on Friday. You can do your normal Friday routine work or whatever. And then Saturday and Sunday, you just chill. Just lay around. Don't go work out. Don't do anything. Like the point of fasting is rest, right? Your digestive system is resting, but also just let your body rest. And so just like hang out, lay on the couch, lay in bed, watch some movies, nap, like drink a lot of water.
Sure.
You can also drink like herbal teas. You can put some lemon in your water. It doesn't have to be strict water only, but you just don't want to consume like obvious calories, right? So like herbal teas are great.
Is that something you still incorporate now?
Yes.
You do? Okay. How often do you do a 3 to 4 day fast right now?
Yeah. I mean, every quarter, once every 6 months, just depends on my schedule.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just, think about our ancestors. Like our ancestors had times of food scarcity, and it was very common to go 1 or 2 or 3 days without eating because there were no supermarkets, no grocery stores, right? You had to grow it or you had to kill it, right? That was where your food came from. And so that was, and animals still in the wild, right? Animals still go for 1 to 2 to 3 days to a week without eating because of food scarcity. So it really is it's a natural process. And the problem that we have in our modern world is we're rich. We have food everywhere. Like that's how I define rich, right? Food everywhere. And our bodies never get a break from eating. And the analogy I like to use with fasting is that it's like a factory. If you've got a conveyor belt and you got a factory and the assembly line, and there's all these parts coming down the assembly line, and everybody's on their little station assembling, let's say you're building a car. Well, if they stop the assembly line, right, they just turn it off and there's no new parts coming down the line, what would happen in the factory? Well, the supervisor would probably say, okay, well, we don't have enough parts to build cars, so let's see what needs to be fixed, right? Let's fix these broken windows. Let's service these machines. Let's clean up. Like, let's reorganize. And that's what's happening in your body. Your body goes into internal house cleaning mode when you fast, because you have all this energy that normally is used for digestion that now needs something to do, right? And so there are definitely, there are enzymatic and genetic switches that are flipped in the fasting state that are pro longevity and pro healing and anti-inflammatory and anti-cancer. It's awesome. Like fasting is really
cool. That's good analogy. Yeah, it's probably, I've said this before, it's probably one of the simplest. Obviously it's free.
Yes.
Easiest things that people could do to improve their health. Now, not a lot of people still do it. I encourage a lot of intermittent fasting, which is what I do personally, but there's certainly not a lot of people that do the extended fast. I just watched last night, actually, the Limitless. I don't know if you've seen that, Chris Hemsworth. It's on Disney Plus.
No, I haven't.
And it's so, Chris Hemsworth is Thor. I always call him Thor, the actor, but he is doing some of these extreme things for longevity purposes. Dr. Peter Attia is on the show and kind of helping him along. And anyway, each episode is about one particular thing that he does. And, one of them is he gets in cold water and
ice baths.
Yeah. And then so one of them,
fasting.
That's right. Yeah. So one of them is a 4-day fast. And so he does a 4-day fast. And I just watched that one last night. And so it was kind of entertaining. And anyway, so a friend of mine, I guess, watched that. And so he asked me if I'd want to do a 4-day fast. And so I guess there's several of us wanting that. I told him to wait till after the first of the year. And I said, yeah, I'll do it. And so
do it. Yeah. I'll definitely do it.
I've fasted plenty of times, but I've never done that long. And so I'll probably do it and maybe document it and, probably make it into a podcast episode or something. So anyways, it'll be interesting, but no, I agree. The health benefits are overwhelming. Yeah.
I want to challenge you. If you feel good on day 5, make it 5 days.
Okay.
If you feel, because sometimes what happens with the fast is on day 4, people start to feel really good. I mean, you get a surge of energy and you're not hungry. So you may find that you're just like, man, this is what happens when you fast. Inevitably, everyone who does an extended fast has this epiphany. You think there's a moment where you go, wow, I can't believe I haven't eaten in X many days and I feel this good. This is weird.
Yeah.
Like you just get this, your body is fully converted. You're totally ketotic, right? You're in ketosis. Like you've got a surge of energy and you're like, oh, cool. I'm good. Like I don't even need to eat right now. So if you might have that fifth day in your back pocket.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and they actually said that. So it was, Peter Attia did it with Chris Hemsworth. And so when they finally broke their fast and ate their meal, they both were like, I wondered if we, shouldn't have gone another day. I think we could have gone another day, so yeah, we'll see. But well, very nice. Just great information and just congratulations on your success that you've had, and I know that you've really helped a lot of people. Oh, one other thing I wanted to ask you real quick, and what brought the conversation up with my patient when he was bringing you up is I'm giving him some ozone treatments.
Oh, cool.
And anyway, he mentioned that he said that you, I guess, kind of was an advocate for that, and I said, well, that's surprising because most people don't know about it, especially in the treatment of cancer. So how did you discover that?
Well, I mean, in the alternative cancer world, ozone's been a big thing for many decades, used in Mexico and Germany and Switzerland, and a little bit in the US, but mostly in other countries. And so, I first heard about it in 2004 or 5. I didn't have access to it though. There was no one in the Memphis area doing ozone treatment. The only thing I could get was hyperbaric oxygen. Like that was doable. Yeah. Which I also think is beneficial.
For sure. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
But I have an ozone generator that so I can make ozonated water. And I've done ozone saunas in a place in Texas. And that was not when I had cancer. It was like just a few years ago or whatever. Ozone is a detoxifier for the body and anti-cancer. And it's really pretty awesome, pretty fascinating. And how do you administer it?
We're doing IV at our clinic. So so we draw the blood and then inject the ozone into the bag, kind of mix it. So now you have ozonated blood. And then put it back in. Hang it up. And I like that method because it basically goes everywhere. Of course, you can put ozone anywhere except breathe it. So, you can do it colonically, which I don't have the attachments for that. You can, you can put it in a lot of places. But anyway, we've seen some fabulous results with it just for other things, chronic pain and different things. So anyways, so
is that like the 10 pass?
It depends on dosing. I mean, we always kind of start off kind of small and go up. I guess it depends patient to patient, as far as, how much you're doing and, number of passes and different things like that. So,
that's fantastic. It is so rare. I was surprised to hear you say that you did it. So that's really cool.
Yeah. No, it's been great. So we just started in the summer, but we've been doing a lot of it, well, very nice. So, as we wrap up, I always ask my guest if they could give us one health tip that would make us healthier today. I know you've mentioned a whole lot of things, but if you could just say one, what would you say?
Oh, I'm going deep with this one. My biggest health tip is forgiveness. It's forgiveness. Forgive the people who've hurt you. Let go of anger and bitterness and resentment toward people in your past, because I'm going to try not to make this too long, but when you are holding on to painful emotions, right, that puts you in a state of distress, right? That's stress, but it's not good stress. It's bad stress. And when you're in a state of distress, subconsciously, when you have unresolved emotional problems or emotional issues, and that means you have bitterness and you're holding on to anger, you will seek to self-medicate. Right? You will naturally gravitate toward things that help you alleviate the pain. And the way we self-medicate is almost always through things that are unhealthy. It's overeating, it's eating the wrong kinds of food, it's drug use, it's alcohol, it's tobacco, right? It's sex addiction, it's gambling, it's spending more money than you have, right? And all of those self-medicating behaviors put you on a downward spiral path, right? And so in order to, it's really hard to stop a bad habit if that bad habit is your medication for your pain. Follow me? So when you forgive, you actually are letting go of the pain. You're saying, I'm releasing this person. I'm letting go of my need for justice and vengeance and right, whatever. And I'm just, for me, as a Christian, I'm like, God, I forgive them. I'm just giving them to you. You can deal with them. They're all yours, right? I'm not going to hold on to this anger anymore. And that just frees you. I mean, there's nothing more powerful that you can do for your, not just your mental and emotional state, but your physical state than forgiving people who've hurt you. And so this is a process that I went through with when I had cancer, when I was in the thick of cancer, and I was reading a bunch of books about healing and health, and this just kept coming up. Author after author talking about the connection between stress and cancer, and how toxic and deadly, really, that anger and bitterness are as emotions. And so the solution to bitterness is forgive. You just make the decision to do it. Doesn't matter how you feel, you just do it and let it go. And so, yeah, that's my number one health tip for sure.
Well, very interesting. Great advice, I have to tell you. So I've done, I don't know how many, 100 and something episodes now. And, with the guests that I have on, with the topics, a lot of the answers are the same, sleep, fast, eat better, whatever. And so I get a lot of duplicates, and that's an original one. That's the first person. So anyway, awesome. Congratulations. That's after I haven't heard that, but great advice. So, well, very nice. So, the book is Chris Beat Cancer. To find out more about him, and I believe you work with people, right?
We actually have a community. So, if you've liked this interview, if you're interested in my story and you want to dig into like the details of what I did, Chris Beat Cancer, the book, is definitely a great place to start. You can get it anywhere, Amazon or Barnes & Noble or wherever. But we also have a private support community and a coaching program called Square One. And you can find that through chrisbeatcancer.com. And also on my website are, again, dozens and dozens of interviews with people who've healed cancer holistically. And so you'll find so much encouragement and inspiration. They're all on the podcast, and they're on my YouTube channel, and they're on my website. And I also have interviewed dozens and dozens of doctors who are, integrative cancer doctors, holistic doctors, And so, yeah, it's just the website is just a repository for information that will empower you and encourage you to help you change your life and get your health back if you're, if that's what you're trying to do.
Well, very nice. Well, for those listening, I'm sure that cancer is so prevalent. Everybody knows somebody who is, has been affected or is currently going through something. And so I would encourage you guys to send this podcast to those people, just to help them. So anyways, thank you for taking your time to talk to us. It's an amazing story. And, just to see you now healthy on the other end. You've been cancer-free for how long now, you said?
Well, my 19-year cancerversary is in a couple weeks.
That's great. That's awesome. Well, congratulations.
Since my diagnosis. So yeah, free for most of that time.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So, all right. Well, Chris, thank you so much, and appreciate everyone listening, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to FitRx. I invite you to share this with friends and family. If you would like, you can check out our website at vibrantlifedc.com, or you can email me at drgreg@vibrantlifedc.com.